is Exodus today, it sounds like it parallels kind of perfectly. I mean,
Yeah.
often Torah portions parallel world events pretty well.
But sometimes you have to reach a little bit, or you have to go to a different part of the Torah. But this
But this
week,
is more
it
specific.
lines up pretty well. So we have a new ruler rises over Egypt who knew not Joseph. By the way, Joseph and all of his brothers are dead, in case you were not sure about the time jump here. We're at least a full generation later.
They're gone.
They're gone. The new Pharaoh doesn't know apparently what Joseph. There's some commentaries on this. We can talk more about what this means, but he knew not Joseph. So, and he's like freaked out about how many Israelites there are living in Goshen. So, if we think about, there were 12 brothers and their wives and children, and probably their servants also became in some way Israelite followers. As we know that at least with Abraham, that he collected more Abrahamic followers of Hashem. So probably Jacob's tribes did as well. So now we're a full generation later. We're talking hundreds of people. You know, if they each have a dozen kids, you know, as 144 at least. But so we've got a lot. So Pharaoh's kind of freaked out about this. Who are these outsiders that all live in one enclave and are different from us? Why are there so many of them? So his plan first to keep them from breeding so much or from having time to plan an insurrection is to impose hard labor on them. That doesn't seem to quite work. So then he just moves into genocide mode and has the midwives kill all of the baby boys born to the Israelite women. Puah and Shifra are the real heroes of this parsha for defying Pharaoh's orders. There's some commentary, some disagreement in the Midrash if they are Hebrew women or if they are Egyptian women that specifically midwife to the Hebrews. So we could discuss like what the implications of that would be if they are fellow Hebrews, like fellow oppressed people daring to stand up against Pharaoh, which can be more dangerous, or if they are Egyptians and they're using their privilege to help others, but like, so that's maybe they're in a little bit safer position to do so, but that's all the more courageous that they're able to see outside of their own situation and help these Hebrew women. So that's, something to think about. So then, since killing the babies at birth, or I guess aborting the Hebrew fetuses doesn't seem to work, then Pharaoh moves into the just drowning all of the children phase. And Moses's mother, Yocheved, saves him by putting him in a basket made of reeds and floating him down the Nile, where, of course, Pharaoh's daughter finds him. Miriam follows the basket as it floats down the river and emerges from her hiding place when Pharaoh's daughter clearly reacts fondly toward the baby. It like isn't gonna drown it. And so Miriam makes herself known and says, I know a woman who just lost her baby, so if you need a wet nurse, let me bring her here. And so Moses' own mother is able to nurse and raise Moses for the first however long they nursed back then, 18 months, 3 years, somewhere in between. So Moses is raised in Pharaoh's palace. Again, like this whole parsha, first of all, it's kind of a long parsha. Like a lot happens in Parashat Shemot, and because of the nature of it, like it's such a important point of our people's narrative. In like a lot of ways, it is the beginning. Like Genesis is the prologue. Parashat Shemot is chapter 1, and then everything else is the book. So it's like a lot. So it's very rife with commentary. So again, of course, there's a very famous midrash that I think some people think is in the Torah of the Pharaoh, the test that he puts before Moses. If baby Moses will grab the coal or the gold, and baby Moses grabs the coal, and that's why he can't speak, because he puts it in his mouth and damages his tongue for life. So there, that comes up here. There's commentary and discussion on whether or not Moses knows he's Hebrew, because it says, because he's raised in Pharaoh's palace. He's raised as the grandchild of Pharaoh, right? By Pharaoh's daughter, who the rabbis call Batya, which is very nice, means daughter of God. So he seems to live an Egyptian life, but then it says he went out amongst his brethren, which sort of indicates that maybe he knew they were his brethren. And then he's distressed to see the Egyptian slave master beating the Hebrew slave, and he kills him. So then, like, does he know that, like, does he see himself in that slave? Or again, is he just using his privilege to help someone more disenfranchised? I don't know. Then why doesn't he use his privilege to get away with it? So he runs away. Yes? Do you have a thought already? Yeah?
No, no thoughts, just a question.
Okay.
Since Moses was raised by his mother, wouldn't it be plausible that she let him know?
Yes. It is plausible. We don't know.
Okay.
But that does play into the discussion, is like, would Yocheved have told him how much time? I mean, if she was sometimes wet nurses were also the nanny then for the child through their whole childhood. So it's possible she was in charge partially for like his education and taking care of him. But if she really just nursed him and then went away by the time he was weaned, then he probably wouldn't have memories of her, right?
No, you're absolutely right.
So we just don't know.
But he stayed, didn't it say he stayed? I don't remember the words, until he was grown, and then he went?
It just says when the child grew up.
When the child grew up. Oh, okay.
That could mean
Anything. Okay. Because I was thinking, even in terms of attachment, he could feel that the people, and I know nobody knows, but
it's 2:10.
2:10. Okay. Vayigdal. Yeah. So when he grew up, it's hard to say.
Okay.
So we don't know, but
We don't know.
He does feel shame about killing the slave master. He runs away into the wilderness. We see another type scene of the man at the well meeting his wife situation. He marries Zipporah. They have 2 sons. Moses is quite happy as a shepherd in the wilderness, but then one of his sheep wanders off and brings him to the burning bush. So now Moses knows his destiny. He has to go back to Egypt. While he's on his way to Egypt, his son gets sick, he gets sick.
It just says That
Yes, Moses. Well, it just says what?
God's
Moses,
gonna kill somebody, kill him, and I guess the following line is his son. It doesn't say they got sick, I don't think, at least I don't remember that.
okay, maybe I interpret that into like how he's gonna die, that he gets.
Yeah, it says at a night encampment on the way, this is 4:24, the Lord encountered him and sought to kill him. So
Okay.
Zipporah took a flint and cut off her son's foreskin.
Okay. So Moses, I guess I interpret that as like he has some kind of mystery illness that appears to bring him close to death. But anyway, Moses is close to death. So Zipporah circumcises their son, and then everybody's fine. There's a lot going on there that we can unpack.
Okay, I was having trouble with the pronouns in that whole paragraph. So it was Moses that got sick, but the touches his legs, those were Moses' legs, not the son's
Yeah.
leg.
Yes.
Okay. And when he left him alone, she added, okay. I was having trouble with the pronouns, that whole part.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And a bridegroom of blood, I don't understand.
Because my bridegroom was on the point of being killed on the account of circumcision, is what Rashi says. So because the blood saved him, that makes like their marriage saved by the blood kind of thing.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. I do love that Zipporah is the one, I do love that Zipporah is the one that circumcises their son. I think it says it is a beautiful drash on the ability of non-Jewish women to raise Jewish children. Yeah.
Moses was not circumcised, correct? We don't have any indication anyway that he
We
was.
don't have any indication. Oh, actually, no, because he was old enough. He was more than old enough when his mom put him in the basket in the first place, that I think we can assume he is.
Okay.
But he
So,
wouldn't
yeah,
have experience
that's
with the
true.
practice because he was 8 days old and then he grew up in a household where
Right.
everybody
Okay.
else did it. So, it just didn't occur to him, I think. I'm not sure how it occurred to Zipporah, bless you, how she knew what was going on with like why God was about to kill Moses, but she took decisive action and she made sure her son was brought into the covenant of God.
Yeah, and the fact that it just doesn't say Moses got sick and this was her cure, they bring God into the story, and so
Very directly, yeah.
it makes it a, yeah.
I find
No
it very
question.
troubling that God wanted to kill Moses. It just makes no sense.
Yeah. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says the angel attempted to kill the baby. So it's unclear in the pronouns in the Hebrew themselves as well. But I think most traditional takes like do agree that it's, I think that's how it is most often read, is that it was Moses, but it's possible. What?
Nothing, we're reading Joel's note
In the chat.
Yeah. So, all right. But then once Moses is safe and the baby is circumcised, by the way, also, hold on, does it say? Okay, so it's not super clear in the Hebrew text itself, but these commentaries that I'm looking at say it's Eliezer, which means we still don't know if Gershom is circumcised, which is interesting. He has 2 children, but we only get the circumcision story of one of them.
And we don't really know which one of them either.
And we
For
don't
that
really
matter.
know which one of them either.
But the fact that this paragraph follows the threat that God promises to make to the Egyptians to slay their firstborn son, maybe there's a relationship between the 2 paragraphs.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think so. You shall say to Pharaoh, thus says the Lord, Israel is my firstborn son. Let my son go, that he may worship me. Yet you refuse to let him go. Now I will slay your firstborn son. But then Gershom is the first one, isn't he? So, yeah, so I think that wouldn't, I don't know, if we're going to make a connection between those two, I think that would indicate to me that we should assume that this circumcision is of the older one. Does it say baby?
No, not in my translation anyway. It just says her son.
Then
I think
yeah,
Rashi Comment tells us it's Eliezer. And what's interesting with the medieval commentators, remember Rashi's only, he was born 980 years ago. It's almost like yesterday.
right. Which is why I don't think we can take for granted that it was Eliezer just because he.
Well, Rashi goes back to what we call Midrash Shemot Rabbah. Now, I didn't
I
look at
assume
that
where.
passage, but whenever I have the same question that people are having right now, that's what I do. I'll go right back and I'll see if I can nail it down in the original. What that means is Rashi, without the help of the internet, was able to conjure out of his own brain. He had read that somewhere, or maybe one of his buddies read it. And
Yeah, but sometimes Rashi also made stuff up.
but we make up a lot more stuff than Rashi.
Yeah, we do, don't we?
We're making it
Wait,
up every
where did I just see the thing about Rabban Gamliel?
I mean, Midrash is all made up.
Yes, but I mean, but like Rashi, so there's a story about I just blanked on her name. The really wise woman in the Talmud, Bruria. There's a story that Rashi writes like in his commentary on Talmud about Bruria committing suicide over her shame after she cheats on her husband. That doesn't exist anywhere in the Talmud. That doesn't exist anywhere from Bruria's lifetime. It seems quite clear that she made that up. I mean, that Rashi made that up.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. But he does, I mean, when he says, I got this specifically from Midrash Rabbah, Shemot Rabbah, or when he quotes another rabbi, that's a safe bet that he did get that from somewhere else that is written down or an accepted tradition. But I'm just saying. And the Midrash also is, oh, here it is. Okay, so Rabban Gamliel, Chizkuni brings this. He's a little later than Rashi, but also a medieval commentator. So he brings in Talmud Nidarim that Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel insists it's Eliezer. So anyway, just like we assume that the God sought to kill him. We accept that that's Moses because that's what all the commentaries agree, but it could have been one of the babies, one of the children. The commentators seem to agree that the child being circumcised is Eliezer, but we don't really know. It's not clear in the text itself. And even if we do accept that it's Eliezer, that still doesn't answer the question of, is Gershom circumcised? And like, was that a dramatic event? What happened? So it's just interesting to me. I do think I seem to remember there is a midrash somewhere, or I made this up, but I'm pretty sure I read this
You
somewhere.
and Rashi.
Me and Rashi. I'm pretty sure I read this somewhere that the older one was circumcised because they were secure in the camp. And then the younger one was still a baby when they had to rush out, start their journey to Exodus. So they just hadn't gotten to it yet. And that's why it gets this dramatic moment. But we don't really know. Again, it's not in the Torah. It's not in the text.
But that sounds like a good possibility.
Did they have a time limit on when they usually did circumcisions when they're on a baby?
Yeah, I mean, because Isaac was circumcised at 8 days old, that was pretty quickly the accepted timeline.
Right.
Just like we still do it today.
Mhm.
So I think that would have been would have been what Moses did too, if he knew to do it at all. Because like I said, also, if he was raised in an Egyptian household, I don't know. But there is also, it's also possible that the Midianites did it. Because, I don't know.
So it's just occurred to me that the writers of Torah purposefully left out critical details so we could discuss it for thousands of
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that's the classical midrashic take on it, is that like nothing in the Torah is an accident. What is or isn't there is all very deliberate, and it's made for us to consider and drash on.
Yep.
I mean, the whole reason it would make a difference which son it was for, I mean, not the whole entire reason, but I was just thinking, if let's say Gershom had not been circumcised yet, it would indicate that Moses was not obviously following whatever Jewish custom and life was in those days. However, if Gershom had been circumcised when he was a baby, then Moses would have been following Jewish life. So that would be one thing that it would make it important. We still have, well, nothing in the story so far tells us why God chose Moses, although God obviously knows that he would be a good leader in the future and all that kind of good stuff. But so Moses' life up till now, that would be important to know,
Right.
or to surmise.
Well, God never gives a reason for why God chooses the people that he does for any of our leaders, Abraham, Moses, David. We don't really get a reason for any of them. However, in the Midrash, again, there are always explanations. So Moses also, I do feel is pretty grounded in what's in the text. Like, Abraham, we get the story of the idols that's like based on nothing. There's no evidence of that in the text itself, but that's the main reason we get for why he was called upon for Lech Lecha. But Moses, we know that he has insider-outsider experience and understanding of the Egyptians and the Israelites, as a Hebrew who was raised in the palace. We know that he's a good shepherd, which is also something that's brought up in God choosing David, that he was a shepherd boy. And so if he's good to his flock, he will be good to the people of Israel. He will be able to shepherd them through the wilderness into the Holy Land. He's humble. He gets over that a bit, but in the beginning, he's very humble. And he's willing to, he has a little bit of the best of a lot of what we see in the other patriarchs and leaders, in his ability to both argue and follow God's directions, that he knows when to push back and when to not. For the most part, there is the incident with the rock that kind of blows up in his face. But there's also a lot of times where God wants to destroy the people, and Moses is like, no, don't do that. And then there, but he, through his hand, all these other miracles come from God. Like he exhibits, right in the text itself, he exhibits characteristics that would make him a good leader, a good choice. So there is that. Okay, but also that's not even the end of the Parsha. After the circumcision situation, Moses does make it all the way to Egypt, and he does make his first appearance before Pharaoh. It does not go well. And he Pharaoh decrees more hard labor, worse, higher demands on them. And the people are upset, and they blame Moses. And that's about where it ends. So it ends right before the real threats start.
Yeah, they have to make their bricks without being given straw.
Yeah. So there we go. There's a lot in this Parsha.
It's easier to read too, because there've been movies and everything.
That's true. Prince of Egypt is an excellent movie. I really do actually think it's a very good movie that, they had scholars from the Jewish Theological Seminary helped work on it. I had a mentor who said he's glad it was DreamWorks and not Disney, because if it was Disney, it would have a dumb talking camel in it somewhere.
With big ears.
Yeah.
And big eyes.
Also, fun fact about the Prince of Egypt, the same actor, I just blanked on his name. He's usually Val Kilmer. Val Kilmer does the voice for Moses and God.
Oh.
And I think that is a beautiful midrash in itself. There is a classical midrash that, like from Midrash Rabbah or Midrash Pirkei de Eliezer, one of the like peak early medieval, late antiquity books, that says the voice from the burning bush was Moses's father. But I think both of those get to a similar lesson, that God speaks to us in voices that we will hear. That like we can't actually hear the voice of God. It would make our brains explode. But hearing the voice of a beloved parent, the voice of our like our inner monologue, whatever, is something that our minds can handle and will actually listen to. Other thoughts?
When I read the very beginning of this, it doesn't really, if the clues are there, I didn't see them, about how many generations passed between Joseph and Moses.
Does it say that they're all gone and does it say the next generation?
It
No.
doesn't say the next.
Okay.
I remember later, when we were discussing one of the later books about the wandering in the wilderness, and it comes up that, I remember a discussion about how long it took God to react to the suffering of the Israelites in Egypt. But here it doesn't say it here. Maybe it says it someplace else.
Yeah, there is well, because in Genesis, I think it's to Jacob, when God forewarns that the people will be enslaved, he says it will be for 200 years. So we don't know. I mean, then somebody else did the math somehow. I'm not even sure how they could possibly. I'm not a math person. Maybe Joel knows how we can count the generations based on the clues that are here. But there seems to be consensus that it wasn't actually 200 years, but that it felt like 200 years because the labor was so hard. And even so, wow, where did it go? I just had Rashi up. Rashi and Chizkuni, several of these, and again, they are quoting the Talmud, they're quoting earlier traditions that says, oh, here we go, it's on 1:8. That there is a disagreement whether a new king rose, whether that means it is literally a new king, or if it was the same king, but he behaved in such a way, like his behavior changed so drastically that it felt like a new king. So if that's the case, like if some of the ancient rabbis think it actually is still the same Pharaoh that dealt with Joseph, then it can only be one generation, because like how would the Pharaoh live 100 years? But again, just we don't know. It's another more fodder for Midrash.
Or are there other things that the book says in other places? Because if you just go by that one sentence, a new king rose over Egypt who did not know Joseph, why would you surmise that it was the same Pharaoh? But maybe later on when he's talking to Moses, things come out that make it sound like it might have been the same one.
Let's see, did they give explanation?
I think Rashi said something like, because the Torah doesn't say the old Pharaoh died and a new one rose.
They are troubled by the fact that we don't see the old Pharaoh die. Let's see, if it goes to, I go to the source text, to Sota 11. What are they arguing about here? Oh, it's not helpful. They're arguing about the different words for rising up and like what those words mean. Oh well. Joel, what citation are you asking about the translation? Let us deal wisely with them.
That's chapter 1, verse 10. And this is a little different than many times we hear two different commentators with two different opinions. that we call a machlochas, meaning, hey, this guy thinks one thing, the other guy. So this is different because over here in the Hebrew, it says, haba nithachma lo. Now the third word is lo. Lo
Right.
clearly means to him or him. Doesn't mean to them. Now,
Right.
I've looked at a number of translations, both the other religions, and everyone says, let us deal wisely with them. That's also our translation. Now, according to Rashi and many other people, they're going, no, no, no. It says, let us deal wisely with him. And I agree with that, just looking at the Hebrew. So my question is this is not an interpretation. So how come all the JPS and all these billions of translations, why do they keep saying them? It's confusing everybody.
Well, Rashi offers two possible explanations for the low. So one, of course, if it is him, capital H, that Pharaoh is somehow foreseeing God's intervention and wants to deal shrewdly with Israel's deliverer.
It's a bad idea, by the way, but
Never works to try to interfere with God's plan. But he also says possibly the low refers to like the Am Yisrael, the people of Israel, is a singular term. So then low is singular. So it's like when we use, I'm trying to think of a good example in English, but I can only think of the inverse. Like when we use the singular they, we still have to conjugate the verbs for plural, even though we're talking about one person. They are missing their purse, not they is. So I think, so you could read it that way. We could read it that it's God. I think either way, the translation of them gets to the meaning. I think, I don't know, if it said him, would we be more confused
I like
about
your
who him is?
Yes, thank you. I like that. That's very good. I just want to point out also in that same phrase in the Hebrew, nit hachma.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone know the word chacham?
Yeah, a chacham, a wise man.
It's right in the middle of that
The
word.
Chachamim of Chelm.
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Let us deal wisely with them. They may not increase tikrena. That's an interesting use too, of that. Hebrew is so weird. Or dense. There's so much happening.
You have to know the background story to from what I'm hearing you say, over time to translate. You
Yeah.
got to know so much about the use and the roots and putting it together.
Yeah. It takes a lot to get to. I mean, that's why I say, like, I can read biblical Hebrew. Like, I can read the Torah and know what it says, but I'm not going to pick up on things like there are linguistic clues to know which authorial school is speaking right now. Or, less so in Torah, but in later texts in Tanakh or Talmud, I can usually tell the difference between Hebrew and Aramaic, but I'm not going to know the difference between, I don't know, Mishnaic Hebrew and biblical Hebrew. Those look very similar to me. They're both quite different from modern Hebrew. I can tell the difference then, but I just, those subtleties you have to study for years to know all that, and you have to know the texts. Like I mean, you can become a linguist scholar for other things and just know the language. Like if your goal was to be part of I forget what they call it, but France has one too. I don't know other languages that have this, but like the academy that like decides what words are real. I mean, I know we have like dictionaries that like change definitions or whatever, keep up with language evolutions as they are spoken on the street, but French and Hebrew are the only two languages I know of that like have high societies that like decide from on high what words are real and not real and that kind of stuff. So you could be a linguist and join that, the Hebrew Language Association or something for modern Hebrew, and you'd probably have a really good grasp of all the other layers. But still, if you didn't know the ancient history, you would still miss so much in deciphering these texts. Like there's so much layer here that we can only scratch the surface of. The Yish Ritsu, increased abundance. Okay, but here's the thing with the Yish Ritsu, or Sheretz. Yes, it means here it's used a lot for increased abundantly. They multiplied greatly, but it has gross connotations. Like I think even here it's in the third person, it's Chazal speaking, but I think we're meant to see it from Pharaoh's point of view, that the Israelites were fertile and prolific. The Yishritzu v'yirbu, like Sheretz is a creepy crawly thing. It's like, it's a I don't know. It's
So
like,
they were multiplying like flies?
yeah.
So another way to get a good understanding, certain words like that, I'd like to see what other biblical verses use that same word. Now, back in the day, I'd have to call up Rashi, but today we don't have to. It's so simple because of all our sources, of all our computerized sources, like Safaria, Sefaria. And and if you dive into this, there's like no end to it. I mean, there's just more and more meanings, and it's so consistent and really allows us to understand what's going on.
David, you had something?
It was on a different topic. I'll wait till we're finished with this.
Go ahead.
Well, after I finished reading, I turned to the Haftorah, and then I turned to get ready for the next chapter. There are two Haftorot, and I wondered, why are there two?
Let's look. Hebcal will tell us if there's a reason that there's two. Because sometimes,
one is Isaiah and the other is Jeremiah.
it could be, let's see. Aha, so it's Ashkenazi Sephardi.
It's the other book that does.
Ashkenazi read Isaiah, and the Sephardim read that Jeremiah. Sometimes there are also two because of things like, I don't know. If it's a special Shabbat, which it doesn't necessarily match with like a holiday or something that you would notice, but it's the third Shabbat after Purim or so. I don't know, I made that up. But like there are specific Shabbats that just get a different Haftarah or a second Haftarah or whatever. So if that Parsha falls on that year, or if it's not, like because there's a double portion and it falls on a different Shabbat, then it's a different Haftarah. So sometimes it's things like this. But this seems like it's just a pretty straightforward different minhag for different geographical communities.
Oh, okay. Just what they were used to doing.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious because I thought, why two?
Why not both?
Yeah.
Huh. Well, let's look at them. Let's see, can we find the different, what do each of them offer in relationship to the Torah portion? So, the Sephardim read Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 1 through chapter 2, verse 3, which is, so of course, it's the beginning of Jeremiah. We get his enunciation, so to speak. Before I created you in the womb, I selected you. Jeremiah. He didn't want to do it. Okay, so I guess we could see. Sorry, did somebody else say something?
Oh, just like Moses.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Rising up against evil wickedness. So Jeremiah overlapped with a relatively okay king, but the temple leadership at that time was no good. Yeah, King Josiah found Deuteronomy. All right, so then let's look at Ashkenazim read Isaiah chapter 7, starting with verse 6. 27, sorry, did I say that right? 27,
Yep, 27.
starting with verse 6 through 28, verse 13. So this is like sort of toward the end of first Isaiah. It's all one book, but we're pretty sure it's at least 2, possibly 3 authors. And this is the end of toward the end, second half of the real living prophet Isaiah. It shall come to pass in days to come, Jacob shall strike root, Israel shall sprout and blossom. I mean, that's pretty immediately evident. Fortified cities will lie desolate. We're going to destroy all of the heathens. So the Isaiah is a little bit, I think, ew, all the tables are covered with vomit and filth. It's an interesting, okay.
What's it put down to the priests, it looked like.
Yeah. The priests
priest and the
are,
prophet reel through strong drink. They are confused because of wine. They stagger because of strong drink. They reel in vision. They totter in judgment. So whom shall one teach knowledge? And whom shall one make to understand the message? Them that are weaned from the milk, them that are withdrawn from the breasts.
Those that are weaned from the drink.
For it is by precept, precept by precept, line by line.
huh. Oh, I like the way that looks in the Hebrew. Look at all those sadis. Kitzav litzav, tzav litzav, kav lakav, kav lakav, ze'er sham. So oh, and that line repeats again. So
Yep.
the Isaiah feels a little darker, a little bit more, I feel like the parallel's a little bit more toward the like Exodus part of Parashat Shemot, the like promise of that this abundant nation will go out and overcome. And the Jeremiah Haftarah feels a little bit more focused on the parallel of Moses and the prophet. Does that feel, other takes?
The Isaiah sounded to me like, you're going to get yours. This God is going to punish you for every precept and commandment that you haven't followed. Am I misinterpreting it?
Well, no, I think that's accurate, but I also think there's a promise of that the righteous will will triumph over those that have violated the precepts.
I missed the last section. Okay. Okay.
And that last bit, he's talking, as you said, to the priest, which is very common, that a lot of the books throughout the book of prophets, throughout the Nevi'im, is directed at Israel itself, at the failures of the temple leadership, the corruption of the monarchy, the lack of faith of the women. But some of this also feels like it's a not warning, but like a prophecy against that among those who will fall is not just Israelites who have strayed from the path, but also those who have never been on the path. The foreign nations, Assyria, whatever. So that's, and that the faithful Israelites will be triumphant over them all. Which is pretty consistent with Isaiah too. Like, it's not something we see as much in the other prophets that I can think of, who are so focused on Israelite behavior. But that, Isaiah prophesies a day when all the world will worship Hashem. Not in this, he doesn't say that part specifically in this Haftarah. I'm just saying that's part of his overall message. So that's our Torah study today. Everybody, what?
I noticed that we didn't have Jochebed or Miriam's name in this portion, either one. It was just, he married some lady and it was a sister. So we get those later at least. So
we do get Miriam, don't we? Hold on,
I don't think so.
A woman conceived. She opened it, she saw a child. Oh, his sister, you're right. Yeah, we get no names, no lady names.
But we're used to that.
We do get Zipporah.
Yes. And we get the midwives.
We get the midwives. Shifra and Pua. Yep. We don't get the, is Yocheved a, no, we'll have to be on the lookout for other evidence of her name. Miriam, I know we do get explicitly later. But did Yocheved come from the rabbis? I think she is named somewhere.
Probably, but not in this portion.
Batya definitely comes from the rabbis. The Pharaoh's daughter's name. She never gets a name. She never appears again after this. But we'll be on the lookout for that. All right. Stay safe, everyone.
Yes.
See Thank you.
Have a good week.
Shabbat shalom. We'll see you tomorrow, I hope.
Take care.
Shabbat shalom.